Once upon a time, Nigeria's capital city was virgin territory. With sprawling greeneries and vast lands, it was the country's best kept secret. Now it has turned into a concrete jungle bursting at the seams. In the city center, modern buildings shine bright, while overcrowded slum communities tarnish the FCT's glitter. Abuja is grappling with a housing emergency. The story of Abuja is a reflection of Nigeria's overall housing crisis. A population explosion means the country has to build at least 1 million houses a year to cater for over 200 million citizens. As it stands, only 100,000 houses are built yearly. At the heart of the FCT, real estate is valued in billions of naira. Only the wealthy can afford the luxury of city living. Less privileged citizens are left to scamper to slum communities. The inequality is glaring. Over the years, the problem of housing has worsened. In 1991, the country's housing deficit was pegged at 7 million. Today, Nigeria needs at least 28 million houses to cater for over 200 million citizens. With overcrowded and obsolete housing infrastructure, residents are caught in a web of skyrocketing rent and controversial demolition exercises. Jabi Masallaci is one of the indigenous communities in the FCT. It recently made news headlines when the local chief palace was demolished.
Ba kwa kaya yenya he mutece ya shirin du yuyi cha ba mamishirai du aku to mushi mute yenya he na jagu amma a mamishiya mun shaka dari nun shaka dari da daya na fiye na kuma na ba kuma mawe shaka dari da daya mu ba shi ya shi amma mishi shi ne ba wai ma babban.
It is not clear if the demolition was part of the renewed drive to restore the Abuja master plan. The chief claimed the demolition of his palace was a spiteful plot to punish the community over a conflict between a vehicle inspection officer and a driver.
To abubada azawa baba bayin cewa abelu biawo baba wonya amotanu mota da kwashi zoko ya ko wa jikara koyi so jikara mota yi a biawo wa be wala katako na ibu abagaye wa sun kunce ai bu gaba da gawo ba ya kun shi bo ba to wala fi mudugoyi in zoko ban abanin page ku ba fara daga baya hai maje darato Nasiru wabe na katafidai wabam duguya wabam fuaya.
One of the victims of the demolition exercise, Nimota Idiraore, lives a short distance away from the chief's palace. For years, she worked hard to build a small house and shop. Little did she know that her entire world was about to come crashing down. She lost everything in the demolition exercise.
Everybody knows that now life is very, very expensive. You can't get a room in Abuja here for 200,000. A room starts from 500,000, even if you want to go to a very high location. But in a very poor location here, you can't get a house of 200,000. You can't get a house of 100,000. Where do they want us to go? Since the demolition, I find it difficult to feed my children. My shop is gone the same day. My house is gone the same day. Even if there's going to be demolition, there's going to be notice. As an old woman managing your life, they demolish my shop. There are young boys that they also demolish their shops. As an old woman, I can hold myself. They let me be selling pure water, but a youth might join into bad way or start going for robbery, do anything just to feed. To eat now is problem for everybody. To eat.
In the corridors of power, a critical meeting winds down. The Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wike, has made it his mission to restore the Abuja Master Plan. His team has been revoking plots for continued contravention of the terms of development and the right of occupancy. They have been guided by the provision of Nigeria's 1978 Land Use Act.
In as much as we want to generate revenue, we also want to control the development of areas. Abuja has to go back to the original master plan. If they need to have some amendments, it is the government that will do such amendments. It is not for the allottees to on their own. And like I said, part of the problems we are having is the agencies. Development control is part of the problem. The land registry is part of the problems. Ages is part of the problems. So that's why you have to be in this task force and face the problems you have caused and solve the problem.
In the pursuit of restoring Abuja's master plan, a narrative unfolds, one that sheds light on the unintended consequences faced by local communities. The biggest problems for most are the high cost of land registration and titles. This is where the private sector can help by improving mortgage services, the financial system, and slow administrative procedures.
I do not think there has been any administration after a Rufai administration that has sustained that policy, or that has refined the policy, or that has fine-tuned the policy, because we must understand that times have also changed. The realities of today are different from the realities of 15 years ago. So no administration has demonstrated that political will to sustain that policy, to improve on the policy, and to ensure that going forward, the locals are carried along in the development of the FCT. So, and it's a big problem for us.
Officials are determined to curb slum settlements across the FCT. The marching orders are clear: no more illegal buildings. As such, the Chief's Palace at Jabi Masallaci remains a wreck.
It's a long history. And I'm not going to bring the history, but what really happened? Some shops were put up where they are not supposed to be. We had understanding with that community, in fact with the community leader. We met several times years back. We understood ourselves. We gave time to each other so that we could respond as at when due. But this unfortunate incident happened when our officers went to work. Those operators of those shops built on the fences of the chief's house started assaulting our officers, beating. Yes. So we said, no, moreover, this is not a commercial place, this is a residential, this is a chief's palace. So all those attachments, we are going to remove them. And that's what we did. Any indigenous building. But studies have shown and practices have demonstrated that sometimes other Nigerians will come and pay the indigenous some money, build house for me here. And whereas those places have been allocated. I sympathize with the indigenous because of their human beings. They procreate. The population grows. But they have been limited by lack of resettlement. So the expansion is enormous. But sometimes, come to us, we'll advise you on what to do. will advise you on what to do, but sometimes they go beyond these bounds.
With exorbitant rents in Abuja, most victims of demolished housing sleep in open spaces, while others squat with friends or family.
Kaga filayen nan idan ka zo dare za ka wasu anan suke kwana. Ran da aka yi wani rusau a nan filin nan ruwa ya daki kayan bayan Allah ya lata musu. Wani kayansa sai da kawai ya zubar da shi kawai ba zai amfani da shi kuma ba. Da yawa a nan yanzu haka wani da ya tashi sai da kawai je ya samu dan uwansa je ya zana kansa. Wanda dai suka dan yi hakuri suka dan daure suka zanna sun suke na a tsaye amma wanda sun tafi wallahi wasu suna dawowa ana sace ba san inda za su je da kayan su ba. A yanzu kan ka zo dare nan za ka tare filin ana kwanciya don an rusa ɗakin mutane filin inda ka fara zuwan nan za ka jama'a kwanciya wurin azubi a wurin in za a yi ruwa hidai su zo su fake a rumfuna hakan nan babu wuri to ka je ka inda mutum yake fakewa ka je ka rusa ma wurin bai da wurin da zai je ya koma ya ke so yi sai da ne muri kawai ilabe kamar yadda zo ke hawa bishiya kwanta shi ma ka zai kwanta kan bishiya an da talaka bai sabin da yake ba ma gaskiya ne na da haka domin me domin ko dabba ne idan ka same shi a inda ke kwana in ka same shi inda ke kwana zaka mata tanadin inda zaka ajiye shi kafin nan ka nemi inda yake amma mutum wanda Allah ubangiji kansa da halicce shi na karrama shi balle kai dan adam kaman shi ai akwai yadda ake mutum alalama ka zo ce ai wani wannan guri fa ga matsayin wani wuri da yake yanzu ne da kai me ya zamu yi sai ku samu matsala ku fahimci juna kamar tanadin inda zaka mai da shi wannan guri asalinta ba na gwamnati bane gurin jama'a ne bayan Allah ne amma shi dan adam ba wanda ya ki ci gaba a rayuwarsa an kawo ci gaba a wannan yanki tunda Allah ya kawo ci gaba a yankin wanda suke wurin sai a mustanadin inda za a kai su wanda su samu inda za su yi neman su ci abincin su su zana lafiya da yan wansu amma hakan bai haru ba kaga anan in na fasara ma cewa talaka an dauki shi a Najeriya tamkar ma kai da ba ma fi shi mutunci a kasan nan domin abin da aka yi a wurin ko da ba zai haka ba.
Accommodation in the FCT for an average Nigerian is a big problem. Without a housing unit scheme to accommodate lower income earners, only the super rich can afford to own houses, while landlords take advantage of the working class.
To get a self-contained in a good place, in a good estate, you'll be thinking about 7, 8, 500, from 500 and above, and getting to 800, even 1 million to get a self-contained within this vicinity. And you know it's on the high side. It's only few Nigerians who can afford that now based on the current cost of things and based on the economy we are running right now. So this when you get a house of 1 million as a self-contained, you have to pay 20% for agency fee, and you know what it is. That means you're paying an extra like 200,000 to the agent, which is 1.2. So you can see the cost is outrageous, and it's no longer comfortable for a lot of people to get.
Probably, worst hit by the housing crisis are the many indigenous people of the FCT. The government's relocation plan remains unfulfilled. Families find themselves living in overcrowded conditions without hope for better accommodations.
I want to tell you that living as an indigenous of FCT hasn't been easy at all. It's like dragging life out of us or killing us, our race, silently. A typical FCT person, one, is facing a serious accommodation challenge. Because just come to think of it, this is the only ancestral land we have. We have been surrounded by development. There's no single space for a typical family to expand or develop. So technically, there's no any means of, as a human being, for you to grow up and have an expanded family. It's just in little situations where you have even tenants in the houses. Most of them, the rooms are highly occupied by the indigenous people. Most of the rooms you have up to 3 to 4 in some cases 5 persons living in a room. So accommodation totally is poor.
With limited resources and education, the community's development is stunted. Demolitions have left many indigents with no place to call home. In the Federal Capital Territory, a glimmer of hope emerged when the government proposed a resettlement plan for the indigenous people, promising improved living conditions. But the hope were marred with corruption and vested interests.
I will begin by saying the law is the law, and the law is not respecter of anybody. Now, however, we understand the peculiarities of the original inhabitants of Abuja. So because when you say indigents of Abuja, I am an indigent of Abuja. You are an indigent of Abuja. For anywhere you've lived in Nigeria for over 10 years, you become a natural indigent of that place. So in consideration of the original inhabitants of Abuja, and you're talking about the Gbagi, the Nupes in some areas, the Igalas in some areas, they all constitute part of the communities in Abuja, but predominantly the Gbagis. Now, I think, in my opinion, the fundamental mistake that was done when the city was first conceived was the error of not dealing with the original inhabitants. Having a policy in place that was going to cater for them over time. I don't know of any, but what I know is that subsequently, when El-Rufai became the FCT minister, El-Rufai came up with the resettlement program, which therefore means that by the time their lands are taken from them and given to developers to develop or used by government for its purposes, the inhabitants of that land are relocated to a certain location where the FCT provides fully built houses for them. We have a clear example is the Apo resettlement, and also the one you have where the mobile police have occupied, the one on Dede Road. Now, the issues are this. The Apo resettlement, we saw the politics, the intrigues, the corruption that spoiled that program, even though it was a beautiful program conceived by the FCT, the then FCT minister, Nasir El-Rufai. How do you explain when you see somebody who is sleeping in his house in Kano getting allocation in a resettlement that is meant for original inhabitants? So it only tells you that something is fishy. So the system was mad with corruption. So while the community was being developed for these people, corruption came in, and some of them were shortchanged, others got the houses, but a good number of them didn't get the houses. And people who were not part of their community, now you saw their names in the list, and they were given these houses. Now, the case of the resettlement community on Dede Road, they refused to occupy those houses. Why? Because they said the place was far for them. It therefore means that while the policy was good, and there is no perfect policy anywhere, I think subsequently the community, the locals were supposed to be carried along in planning these programs so that they buy into it, they become part of it, they agree with it. But to just go to the middle of the desert because you built a 5-star hotel there and you're asking people to just move in there, you know, it might not be that successful. So these are some of the issues. However, going forward, because since El-Rufai's administration, I do not think there has been any administration after a Rufai administration that has sustained that policy, or that has refined the policy, or that has fine-tuned the policy, because we must understand that times have also changed. The realities of today are different from the realities of 15 years ago. So no administration has demonstrated that political will to sustain that policy, to improve on the policy, and to ensure that going forward, the locals are carried along in the development of the FCT.
One of the benefits of good governance is the provision of an enabling environment for citizens to strive. This brings the added benefit of basic necessities such as food and shelter. But it seems as if the government has prioritized one demographic, the super rich, over the overwhelming majority of average Nigerians.
It is provided in the Abuja project policy guidelines, policy documents. Provision has been made that all indigenous communities within the city proper, when it comes to development, they are to be resettled. So the policy is there. But if we are to review the policy and look at various options, well, that is open to the administration. It's beyond this table.
Masarci ya ku auta mutashi ya gwamnati yi ku ya ga ba kuka akwai akumi waje shekara 12 yi na ba ma kun yi a layibo a talayin to abi kusun a ta yarga ma kun don iyan ajojin hashiya kun wayin ya shi wuna an buci koyi gwamnati ta ji ya lalo da gwamnati ya kuna banga ga mai a gayi to gwamnati ko shi kwa gaya kun dai da masu ya kun gban azagun atun ba waje na biya ko inu azagun aza ko gwan atun ba waje ya kun gban tera masu iye apilo in gwamnati a mai yi kwa gayi yero a cajin alayi saboda ta yi rage yi mai akuya.
Government plays a pivotal role in shaping the housing landscape. However, the transformation of the city center has been achieved at the expense of citizens pushed further and further away from their prosperous city center. Unable to cope with the rising cost of living, they have been forced out. The establishment of affordable housing initiative may stem the tides of discontent before it explodes into a full-blown housing crisis.